The atomic bomb on Hiroshima killed 90,000 to 146,000 people, and the one on Nagasaki took 39,000 to 80,000 lives. Despite the devastation, how did these two atomic bombs bring about important changes to the nation of Japan? U.S. forces dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6 and 9, 1945. Between 70,000 and 80,000 people died in Hiroshima by the blast and the resultant firestorm. After U.S. President Harry Truman asked again for surrender, and Japan showed no indication of surrendering, another atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, killing another 25,000 to 75,000 people. For months and years afterward, people continued to die from radiation illness and related injuries, with starvation also occurring. Over the following 3 months, approximately 90,000 to 146,000 people in Hiroshima died, with the estimates for Nagasaki being between 39,000 and 80,000. Japan is one of the most adaptable countries in the world. It is capable of rapid change, even after crises that would halt the progress of other nations. When the shogunates collapsed in the 18th century, the feudal system disintegrated. During World War I, a first-rate economy sprung up on deserted farmlands. During World War II, the modest islands of Japan burgeoned into an empire with one of the most powerful navies in the world. After the devastation of that World War, Japan emerged as one of the most modern countries in the world. The bleak visuals of the atomic aftermath were etched into the minds of the Japanese nation. After the event, Japan emerged as a changed nation. Here are 5 ways the atomic bombing changed Japan. The beginning of occupied Japan. Between 1945 and 1952, the United States occupied Japan. The Allied occupation of Japan signaled a vital turning point in Japanese history. The goals during that period were reform and recovery, with the ultimate goal being to design a peace agreement and promote democracy. Shigeru Yoshida served as prime minister and can be credited as one of the people who propelled Japan from a devastated country toward one with a healthy economy that matched pre-war levels. Eventually, the Allies had to leave, so on September 8, 1951, the Treaty of San Francisco was signed between the Allied powers and Japan. Japan was to have rights to its main islands, but had to renounce all rights and titles to the Pescadores Islands, Taiwan, and the islands it had gained during World War II. Japan retained some residual rights to the Ryukyu Islands, pending future revisions. The 1971 Okinawa Reversion Agreement returned the Ryukyu Islands to Japan in 1972 and became one of the Japanese prefectures. Full sovereignty was returned to Japan, but its military was dismantled and the country disarmed. Later, in 1954, the army was reorganized into a defense force called the Japanese Self-Defense Forces. The Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security between the United States and Japan was created in 1951 and revised in 1952. It delineated mutual defense obligations and economic cooperation. After the treaty was signed, the U.S. continued to occupy Japan. The Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, or SCAP, took on the task of rebuilding Japan and initiated efforts to revive its economy. Changes were instituted, including land reform, limitations on the power of the zaibatsu, a reduction of the emperor's status in favor of the parliamentary system, initiation of tax reforms, and decreased inflation. Inflation happened because Japanese industries were subject to the jolt of a sudden influx of contracts due to the international need for provisions for wars being fought abroad. Women were also granted greater rights, and Japan renounced its right to wage war by transforming it to serve a defensive function only. Critical changes in sociopolitical hierarchy. The Allied occupation brought significant changes to the sociopolitical framework of Japan. A more democratic set of laws was deemed necessary, which did not favor elites or the wealthy. The power of the zaibatsu was immense to the point that it virtually controlled the economy, and greater pluralism was necessary to give people upward mobility. The emperor's role was nearly godlike, to the point that any error he might make would reverberate throughout society and could have unintended effects. Nominal political powers were removed from the emperors, reducing them to ceremonial heads of state. The U.S. occupation intended to grant Japan the freedom to initiate its tenets and give everyone the right to participate in the creation of laws that would work for them. Because the country had incurred the adverse effects of having itself managed by a class of elites, the imperial house or wealthy businessmen, There was a need to remove senior leaders who would repeat past mistakes. A new generation of leaders was essential to preserve freedom. One suggestion claimed that the military should not hold political positions. Besides the establishment of democracy, the economy was a significant concern for the survival and integrity of Japan as a sovereign country. Joseph Dodge, a banker from Detroit, acted as a consultant in reconstituting the financial system and balancing the budget. He also established an exchange rate for the Japanese yen. Dodge had initiated an austerity program with price controls to help Japan prevent further inflation. SCAP, through his guidance, set up policies for Japan to avoid frequent governmental bailouts of failing companies, since that would drain the national budget. Dodge recommended a system of controlled subsidies in sectors like farming that were subject to intermittent losses. The post-war constitution, which replaced the Meiji Constitution, provided for a parliamentary government with members of the Diet being elected. It guaranteed the Japanese their rights of life, liberty, equality, academic freedom, and collective bargaining. The Diet was the sole legislative division, and the judicial branch was made independent. Losing Korea. Japan had annexed Korea in 1910, but the territory no longer belonged to them after the war. Instead of placing the domain into the hands of one country, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel, with the northern portion going to the Soviet Union and the southern part going to the United States. Although there were some attempts to unite the country after this initial division, it was clear that it would not happen. Under the guidance of the Soviet Union, North Korea became communist, leading some citizens to flee to South Korea, whose head of government was staunchly against communism. In 1950, North Korea attacked South Korea to unify both countries under one banner. The war between North Korea and the United Nations forces, which the United States led, ended in a stalemate in 1953. The conflict remains unresolved, although discussions are underway to conclude the frozen conflict officially. The equipment needed by the United States, which fought heavily in the war, was provided by the Japanese Model J Corporation, which is a corporation whose employees are trained specifically for their jobs. This sudden infusion of money was a boon to Japan, providing $12 billion to its economy. The lingering radiation. After the bombs fell on August 6th and 9th, Japan surrendered on August 14, 1945. General Douglas MacArthur presided over the proceedings on September 2nd, where they signed the Japanese Instrument of Surrender. However, something interesting happened within that period. It was expected that the effects of the radiation would linger for almost 75 years, but people began returning within a week, looking for their relatives and loved ones. Occupation troops also arrived soon after the bombing. When the bomb exploded on Nagasaki, it raised the ground temperature to around 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Radioactive rain also poured down on the city's buildings and residents. Most of the hospitals have been destroyed, and there was a severe lack of medical providers. As people flocked back to the cities to help their beloved, they probably absorbed more radiation. A nuclear blast may take 10 seconds to reach its maximum size, but its impact lasts for generations. Miscarriage was common for pregnant survivors of the blasts. Even if they bore children, they usually died in infancy or suffered intellectual or physical disabilities. Medical observers noticed that children conceived in August 1945 had smaller heads. In the following years, diseases like leukemia, thyroid, and breast and lung cancer significantly increased among the survivors. While the claims of sustained long-term damage in survivors are warranted, similar claims towards their offspring are slightly exaggerated. According to many studies, the effects of the event on the subsequent generations of survivors have not been as grave as many were led to believe. As for the survivors, the incidence of these cases depends on various factors, from genetic makeup to sex and age. Women survivors had a higher risk of developing cancer than men. Younger people were also at higher risk. The people who later inhabited the two cities were also exposed to radiation and its effects. However, over the years, the radiation levels in both cities have dropped below acceptable levels, making them perfectly safe places for anyone to live today. Japanese policy on nuclear weapons. Before the Second World War, Japan had a few nuclear research programs, including the B Research Program initiated by the Imperial Japanese Navy's Technological Research Institute, the NIGO project at Riken, and the FGO project at another Japanese naval command. In the aftermath of the Second World War, The Japanese wanted to continue their nuclear research at Riken, but the U.S. Secretary of War ordered the project cessation. In 1946, a report claimed that Japan had a nuclear arsenal, but these claims seemed a little far-fetched without evidence. As a nation that has been on the receiving end of nuclear devastation, Japan has held strong sentiments about its nuclear program. The three non-nuclear principles Japan has adhered to since the atomic bombings state that 1. Japan should not possess nuclear weapons, 2. Manufacture them, or 3. Permit their entry into its territory. The Japanese nuclear policies since the late 60s have upheld these principles. In the formative years of this policy, Eisaku Sato, the Japanese Prime Minister, agreed to enter the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in return for the control of Okawa, a city under U.S. occupation that was assumed to have harbored U.S. nuclear arms. Sato later introduced the Four Pillars nuclear policy in the early 70s, which championed 1. The peaceful use of nuclear power, 2. Working towards global disarmament, 3. Reliance on the extended U.S. nuclear deterrent, and 4. The support of the three principles. Nevertheless, Japan continued to use nuclear energy for non-military purposes. To reduce reliance on foreign sources through energy reduction in 2001, Japan looked toward creating a system of sustainable development. This move was partly a reaction to the 1973 oil crisis that negatively affected Japan and the rest of the world. Japan made an aggressive effort to build nuclear power plants and reduce electrical consumption. The other motivation for this was safety protocols related to natural disasters, such as earthquakes and tsunamis. Even though Japan lost the Second World War, the following constitution and policies helped to create less of a gap between social classes, bringing the vast majority of the Japanese closer together. Japan is about the same size as the U.S. state of California and has a population of about 125 million people. For a country of modest size, it has one of the richest and most varied histories in the world. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about post-World War II Japan, check out our book, History of Japan, a captivating guide to Japanese history, including events such as the Genpei War, Mongol invasions, Battle of Tsushima, and atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.